Kyo's Sheiho is walking to school with her friends, Tsukasa and the tall, teasing Motoki. Motoki playfully brings up the recent confession Kyo's received from a junior, which seems to be affecting her, given the slight blush on her face. With his arm casually around Tsukasa, Motoki notes that Kyo's isn't putting up much resistance today. Then, without much tact, Tsukasa directly asks if she was just blushing, flustering Kyo's enough that she quickly walks ahead, using the excuse that they'll be late if they don't stop fooling around. Motoki speculates that her strange behavior is because of that confession, and Tsukasa follows up by asking if that's true. Embarrassed, Kyo scolds Motoki for talking too much, but he defends himself, saying it's not like she's trying to hide it. Hearing all this, Tsukasa looks slightly hurt, noting that Kyo's didn't tell him anything about it. Motoki reassures him that if Kyo's wanted him to know, it must mean she's aware of her feelings. That word, love, seems to spark something in Kyo's, who goes quiet as a breeze blows, triggering memories of her first love. Back in elementary school, she remembered receiving her first confession from Tsukasa while they were cleaning up trash near the base of a mountain. It happened so suddenly that she didn't have time to react, but her heart had pounded and her face had burned with emotion. As time passed, Tsukasa kept telling her he loved her, but she eventually stopped paying much attention to it. Then, in middle school, they met Motoki and became good friends. One day, Motoki, who had overheard a conversation between them, bluntly asked why they weren't already dating. He said the whole school was already assuming they were a couple, and even started telling others they were dating. Kyo's was shocked and asked him to correct it, but Motoki suggested they use it as an opportunity to make their relationship official. Because of that, Kyo's ended up dating Tsukasa. Fast forward to the present day, the three of them are eating lunch in the cafeteria. Kyo suddenly realizes that the only boys ever around her have been Tsukasa and Motoki, which may be why no one else ever confessed to her until now. Yesterday's confession was the first from someone outside their usual trio. Seeing her distracted, Motoki asks if she's still thinking about the confession. Kyo's clarifies that she isn't necessarily worried, but she's simply not used to being confessed to. Tsukasa, feeling slightly hurt, reminds her that he was the first to confess. In her mind, though, Kyo's compares the two confessions and feels they're very different. While eating, Motoki casually suggests she try dating the new boy without overthinking it, but Kyo's disagrees, saying it's not that simple. Even Tsukasa, surprisingly, encourages her to give the new boy a chance. Motoki then questions if Tsukasa would really be okay with her dating someone else, considering how often he's declared his love. Tsukasa admits it's because Kyo's keeps ignoring him, and Kyo's confesses she doesn't believe his feelings are genuine. Motoki sympathizes with Tsukasa's bad luck, while Tsukasa passionately insists that he really does love her. But to Kyo's, his smile doesn't feel convincing. After all, she believes that smiling is just what he always does. Suddenly, the boy who confessed to Kyo's the day before walks up to them. Though they had agreed to talk later, he says he couldn't wait. Motoki and Tsukasa start gossiping and teasing, so Kyo suggests the boy and she talk in private elsewhere. As she's about to leave, Tsukasa gently asks her to give the boy a proper answer, since confessing one's feelings takes real courage. Kyo silently nods and walks away with the boy. While they walk, Kyo reflects in her head, love feels scary. Deep down, she realizes she's never truly been interested in romance or having a boyfriend. Confessing your feelings takes courage. But what people often forget is that responding to a confession takes just as much bravery. Whether you accept or reject someone, the relationship between you two will inevitably change. And that's what Kyo's is afraid of. She doesn't want anything to change. She just wants the three of them, herself, Noada, and Motoki, to stay exactly the same. So, while she turns down a boy's confession out in the schoolyard, Motoki jokes to Noada that since the boy got rejected, he probably doesn't have to carry Kyo's lunch tray anymore. Noada claps back, teasing Motoki that maybe this attitude is why he still doesn't have a girlfriend. Back in their classroom, third-year Class B, Kyo's casually mentions the confession to her friends. Motoki, ever the instigator, asks what excuse she used this time to reject the boy. She simply explains that she doesn't really need romance in her life right now. Motoki thinks it's a shame, and Noada agrees, though he adds with a small smile that he's at least glad Kyo still doesn't belong to anyone else. Kyo lets out a sigh. Nawada never seems to tire of teasing her like this. Later, after school ends, the trio is trying to decide what to do next. Motoki says he's exhausted and just wants to head home and crash. Kyo scolds him, reminding him that even if he's just a ghost member of the art club, he still needs to participate, especially since he's expected to do an art presentation this summer. Motoki shrugs it off, claiming he doesn't know much about art anyway. Trying to be helpful in his own weird way, Nawada jokes that he could just splash paint randomly on a canvas and call it art. Kyo is taken aback. He's the president of the art club. How could he say something like that? Just then, a girl in a sports uniform calls out to Motoki from outside the window. They chat for a bit, and it turns out she's trying to convince him to return to the volleyball club. But Motoki firmly, though politely, refuses and heads home. Later that evening, only Kyo and Nawada remain in the art club room. As Nawada sets up his canvas, Kyo expresses concern about Motoki, but Nawada reassures her. He believes Motoki must have his own reasons for stepping away. Still, Kyo insists, because they're friends, she feels responsible. Nawada quietly tells her that this caring nature is one of the things he likes about her. Kyo blushes, thinking that sometimes Nawada masks his serious thoughts with dry humor. She's known him longer than Motoki, and at times he feels distant, like someone hard to reach. But she decides not to dig deeper into Motoki's issues for now. Kyo begins to reflect again. She wonders about Nawada's tendency to joke when he says those 3 words. Maybe it's his way of protecting himself, a signal that he's not serious. But what if he is? What if he really means it? Her eyes drift toward Nawada, and she realizes he's already looking back at her. When he asks her if something's wrong, she quickly says everything is fine, even though she's blushing intensely. Nawada keeps staring at her, then finally asks her why she's been so fidgety. She panics. Is it because someone confessed to her seriously today and she's still shaken? Or is it because, for the first time, she's feeling something different, being alone with him like this? Nawada suddenly stands up and asks if she gave that boy a proper answer. She says yes. And then, stepping closer, he brings up his own feelings. He confesses again, telling her how she's never once properly responded to his feelings. This time, he asks her for a real answer. Flustered and overwhelmed, Kyo finally gives in. Later that night, at home, Kyo is staring off into space during dinner. Her mom notices and asks what's going on. Her dad immediately gets defensive, thinking it's about a boyfriend, and protests that she's too young. Her mom shuts him down and gently presses Kyo for the truth. Kyo tries to deny it, but a message lights up on her phone. It's from Nawada. He thanks her for giving him an answer today, and ends the message with, "I love you." Seeing her face turn completely red, her mom teases her with a big grin. Kyo, totally embarrassed, gets up and storms back to her room. On her bed, Kyo hugged her pillow tightly, completely unable to sleep as she kept recalling how just a few hours ago she had accepted Nogata's love confession because he said it seriously this time, and now she couldn't stop getting flustered. The next day, Motoki immediately noticed the dark bags under her eyes and teased her about sleep deprivation, also pointing out that Nogata was acting strange too, smiling like a creep, and when Kyo tried to play it off casually, Nogata straight up announced that they were dating now, which made Motoki go silent for a moment before nonchalantly remarking that it took them long enough. Not exactly congratulating them but adjusting himself to their new dynamic, telling them to stand together while he took a few steps ahead, no longer in the middle like before, and although Nawada reassured her that since Motoki was fine with their closeness, everything should be okay, Kyo couldn't shake the thought that if they weren't dating, Motoki wouldn't have to be so thoughtful or change his position in the trio, and while she couldn't undo her answer to Nogata, she felt the sting of how things had unavoidably changed between the 3 of them. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, a sudden hand grab startled her, Nogata holding her hand without warning, causing her to flinch, and though he quickly apologized, she couldn't help but feel awkward, not realizing that in the background Motoki had a dark expression on his face. Later during recess, as Kyo stood alone by the vending machine and replayed the hand-holding incident in her mind, unsure if she had hurt Nogata by pulling away and wondering what couples were even supposed to do since they had been just friends for so long. Her thoughts were interrupted again, this time by Hino, the same girl from volleyball yesterday, who surprised her but then joined her in drinking beside the machine, noticing it was rare to see Kyo's without either of her two best friends, and while Kyo's insisted they weren't always together, Hino casually asked if she was thinking about something deep, but added she didn't have to answer if she didn't want to, which eventually led to Kyo's opening up just a little about starting a dating relationship, prompting Hino to assume it was with Motoki and sigh in relief when Kyo's denied it, and once she got the full story, Hino gave surprisingly thoughtful advice, telling her that maybe they should just start with holding hands and figure things out gradually, also asking the important question of whether Kyo's truly loved Nogata or not. Later that day, as they walked home without Motoki, who had skipped club activities again, Kyo's and Nogata discussed his absence, and while Nowata argued it was fine since Motoki only joined to keep the club from getting disbanded, Kyo's insisted that was all the more reason he should participate. To which Nowata jokingly suggested maybe Motoki was just being considerate toward their new relationship, and after a short silence, he apologized for surprising her with the hand-holding that morning, with Kyo's assuring him it was okay and she was just startled, agreeing when he said they shouldn't rush things, but then as they looked at the sky together, Nogata asked what she truly felt about him since she didn't even reply to the message he sent the night before, and while Kyo's blushed and struggled to say anything, Nowata gently told her not to overthink it, confessing that he didn't mind if she didn't love him because he believed mutual love was a myth. That even when people say they love each other, the feelings are never exactly equal, and in a way, it's like everyone is living through their own version of unrequited love, but even so, he loved her, and that was enough for him, which made Kyo's blush even harder as she remembered what Hino had told her earlier, so she finally mustered the courage to grab his hand first, and in that simple moment, it wasn't just her face that turned bright red, her boyfriend's did too. And even though she still didn't fully understand what love meant yet, her heartbeat just wouldn't stop racing. On another day, Kyo is in her bedroom trying to pick the right clothes for her upcoming weekend date with Nogata, her first date ever. And while he had told her not to overthink it since they were still getting used to being a couple step by step, she's stuck debating between choosing a mature or a cute look. Her mom notices the struggle and immediately starts teasing, asking if it's Motoki or Nogata she's dressing up for. And while Kyo tries to hide it, her reaction gives everything away. Fed up and flustered, she pushes her mom out of her room, but not before her mom hands her some pocket money and asks her to keep it a secret from her dad. In the end, Kyo goes with a cute outfit, though she grumbles about how her mom's sexy outfit suggestion messed with her nerves, and when she meets Nogata, he compliments how pretty she looks but then cheekily mentions he still wants to see that sexy outfit someday since she apparently couldn't stop muttering about it earlier. They walked together side by side with no fixed destination in mind. Nogata admits he's not used to this since he usually hangs out with Motoki, but this time's different. He even confesses that he talked about the date with Motoki and was simply told to just be normal, which makes Kyo blush before Nogata gently suggests they start with hand-holding, reminding her it's okay to go slow, while a few meters behind them, someone hides awkwardly behind a cafe board. Turns out it's Motoki who got worried after that consultation and ended up tailing them, and just when he thinks he's being stealthy, Hino appears out of nowhere and startles him, saying she was just on a convenience store run, but somehow ends up joining his little spy mission, although Motoki doesn't notice how red her face gets when he instinctively pulls her closer to avoid being seen. The couple eventually heads into a movie theater, and inside the dim hall Nogata sincerely tells Kyo how happy he is to watch a movie with someone he loves. While a few rows behind, Hino quietly remarks how nice it is to watch a movie like this together, but Motoki, totally oblivious, just responds by pointing out that they're here watching a couple, together, just the two of them, making Hino's heart flutter again even though he only seems focused on Kyo and Nogata. After the movie, the couple heads to an arcade where their ticket stubs give them one free try at the crane game. Nogata reminds Kyo to hold his hand again and she gives in, while from the shadows, Motoki watches silently until Hino gently asks if they can just go back now. Meanwhile, Kyo and Nogata take cute pictures together at a photo booth, with Nogata teasing her for being so adorable and wanting to put the photo on his phone cover, though Kyo scolds him to not say weird things or be so blatant about their relationship. So he settles for tucking the photo into his wallet instead, and Kyo makes a quiet mental note that it's her first time seeing Nogata this happy, wondering whether she should stick one of the photos into her student book too. When Nogata tries to ask for more photos, she says they can take more next time they visit the arcade and then suddenly pulls his hand again, not realizing how red his face turns. As they leave, Nogata asks if she's fallen for him a little now that she's holding his hand. Voluntarily, Kyo gets so flustered that she abruptly changes the plan, says goodbye, and walks away despite earlier suggesting they kill time in a cafe until dinner, leaving Nogata standing there, stunned and blinking, while later that night, back at his home, he's lying in bed and staring at the photo of them together with a quiet smile when his phone suddenly rings and Motoki's name appears on the screen, prompting him to head outside and meet his best friend. Meanwhile, Kyo's felt like she was in serious trouble after running away from their date. It practically looked like she rejected him, and even though she tried to apologize once, Nowata had brushed it off with a smile, telling her not to worry about it. But now it had already been 3 days since then, and somehow Nogata had kept a gloomy expression this whole time, which made her wonder if it was because of how she had been avoiding him. And just as she spaced out again during art club, Motoki, who had suddenly become surprisingly active in the club lately, snapped at her, asking what was wrong with her and why she kept zoning out, though she tried to play it cool and sarcastically asked what he wanted from her, to which he replied that he had nothing better to do and called out to her because he was bored. But Kyo's pouted and questioned his random motivation to join the club in the first place, then told him to actually start drawing something if he was going to stick around, and while he agreed, he cheekily said he wanted her to teach him, which she flat out refused, thinking that she'd make a terrible art teacher, especially since, unlike her boyfriend, she didn't have any passion for drawing. But Motoki kept insisting, saying he wanted her to be his teacher, and as she tried to dodge the request by asking Nogata for help, he didn't even hear them at first because he was so out of it, but eventually he looked over and agreed with Motoki, saying it really should be Kyo's teaching him, then gave them a smile before stretching and abruptly saying goodbye, surprising Kyo's when he said he wanted to leave early, making up some excuse about not feeling well and needing to rest, which worried Kyo's enough to ask if he was sick. But Nogata just shook his head and explained that he couldn't focus today, and when she hinted that they could go home together, he rejected the idea, saying he wanted to be alone, adding that since Motoki had found some inspiration to draw, she should help him out and maybe show the drawing to Nogata. Later, after he left, Motoki casually asked Kyo's if she wanted to go home together, and as they walked, Kyo's finally let out everything that had been bothering her, and after hearing the full story, Motoki calmly told her that Nogata probably wasn't mad at her for avoiding the dating topic, but he was definitely mad at him, which shocked Kyo's as she asked if something had happened between them, and that's when Motoki admitted the truth. He had confessed to Nogata that he liked his girlfriend, meaning Kyo's, which made her face go completely red in an instant, and Motoki continued, saying that at first he thought it would be fine, since it was clear how much Nogata loved her and it would be easier if they all just stayed friends like nothing had changed. But then he told her about how he had secretly followed them on their date and how he felt jealous watching them hold hands. It looked like she was enjoying it too much, and in that moment, he was completely ready to get punched in the face by Nogata. Nowata did feel angry, but he wasn't the type to throw a punch. Still, the tension hung between them until Motoki told her bluntly that he wanted her to choose, that he couldn't suppress his feelings any longer, and it was up to her now. Both of their faces flushed red from the emotional weight of it all, and later, as she walked alone with her thoughts spiraling, unsure and overwhelmed, she ended up yelling into the empty air, begging for someone, anyone, to just tell her what to do. Recalling her boyfriend's teasing, staring at her phone thinking of calling him, but remembering their last conversation made her hesitate until she gave up and turned to go home, only for a woman in traditional clothes to suddenly appear, cryptically saying, "Even if it's not conveyed now, isn't it okay?" before vanishing without a trace. Later, in her room, Kyo sat in quiet conflict, replaying that strange encounter and wondering if she should call Nogata, but deciding instead to talk to him tomorrow, unaware that across the city, a sudden accident had taken Nogata's life. His desk now draped in mourning, classmates already gone home, leaving only her and Motoki in the classroom as she sat there in quiet disbelief, unable to process the fact that he was gone, refusing Motoki's offer to walk her home while he lingered behind.